Which came first, the program or the fellowship? The program came first, but a lot of people struggle with that one. The confusion arises from two misconceptions. The first is the widely held belief that meetings and fellowship are the program. That's why some of you who heard the question, which came first, the program or the fellowship, thought it meant which came first, the chicken or the chicken. Meetings and fellowship aren't the program. AA co-founder Bill Wilson makes it crystal clear in Chapter 5 of the Big Book what comprises the AA program. He writes that the 12 steps are the program of recovery. But ask a lot of AA members how their program is doing, and they'll tell you how many meetings they attend or how many meetings they've recently missed. They'll rarely detail the struggle they had earlier that day with Step 3 or their progress implementing Step 10 as a daily practice. As a result, there are countless 12-step members walking around who measure their recovery on their meeting attendance. I'm sure that's good news for the General Services Office, whose salaries are paid from the proceeds of group donations. But it's not very good news for those in recovery who mistakenly believe that mandatory meeting attendance is the price of freedom. Try telling a 15-year-old sponsee they have 70-plus years of meetings to look forward to if they want to stay clean and sober. Meetings were intended as a place to be introduced to the program, the steps. A lot of meetings do just that, so I'm not trashing meetings. And aside from carrying the message to newcomers, meetings are also a safe place for beginners who are still shaky, and a great place to find sponsees. I'm asking whether meetings are seen for what they were intended to be, a place to be introduced to the program of recovery. They were intended to be an introduction to the solution, not the solution itself. So how did fellowship and meeting attendance usurp the steps and become many people's, quote, program? One idea can be tied back to the notion that God is required for recovery. Simply stated, if God is required to recover, then everyone thinks they have to have a higher power, whether they actually do or not. The 12-step movement claims that a belief in a super being or higher power is necessary for recovery. But if you're one of the about half of the folks who rolled their eyes at that idea, then maybe a group of drunks, G-O-D, would suffice. Ever heard, I find God in the rooms, or my higher power is the sharing in meetings? Peer pressure can get people to do all sorts of things they otherwise wouldn't do, and this isn't much different. If the price of being accepted by your 12-step fellows is belief in something you don't believe in, well, then why not just go along to get along? But that's a slippery slope. If the only place you claim you can find that higher power is a meeting, then you'd better make a lot of meetings. So if the program came first and the fellowship came into being as a result of the program, what's the purpose of the fellowship? It isn't a program of recovery, so where does fellowship fit into the equation? Let's look at what AA co-founder Bill Wilson says about that. He writes, "We meet frequently so that newcomers may find the fellowship." Who's the we in that sentence? It's not the newcomer. It's the alcoholic or addict who's recovered and is willing to introduce the steps to the newcomer. The steps are a manner of living, according to their author, that we learn to apply to our lives. If we've done that, we have something to offer the newcomer at a meeting. On the other hand, if we're at the meeting because we had a bad day and, quote, need a meeting, we're missing the whole point of the AA program. The 12 steps offer 4 specific steps that are applicable throughout the day to get us through the rough spots. And we'll talk about those 4 steps in a future episode. If we're practicing the program throughout the day, we don't need to wait to get to a meeting to be okay. Another way to think about this, assuming you've been through the steps, is to ask yourself this question. Do you go to a meeting because you need a meeting, or do you go to a meeting to give back to the newcomer?